and welcome to the Modern Arizona podcast. I'm your host, Billie Tarascio, family law attorney here, and I am joined today by a local mom who is going to share her story and teach us all about grooming and the signs to watch out for to make sure that your children can stay safe. Nikkol Krug, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here.
Happy to have you here, Nikkol. Can you just start at the beginning and tell us what happened to you and your family?
Sure. It started my daughter's freshman year when she decided to try out for volleyball. They had a new coach at the high school, just taking over the program. He was in charge of the boys program. He then stepped in over the girls program. And she ended up being on the freshman team that year. But I will say that day when you meet the coach, you find out your kid's on the team and you meet the coach. He laid the groundwork then, looking back. He started with, if you have a problem, your kid's not playing, don't come talk to me, talk to your kid. They know why they're not playing. You have a problem, don't talk to me. It was never, you could never address him. And if you have a problem, I have the backing of the AD. You're not the athletic director. You don't get to ask me questions. Strange, but I thought, well, I know what the program was before, and it was apparently a mess. So I felt like you are laying the groundwork. You are stating no more BS, no more drama. I'm not gonna, right?
Yeah, you can understand some of it. Yeah.
So I'm backing coach. Yes. So she makes the freshman team or whatever, Froshmore team, whatever they call it. Nothing out of the ordinary that season. That following summer, so she's going into her sophomore year, I reach out to him through the app that we're supposed to reach out to him. And I say, I am looking for a hitting coach for my daughter. Do you know of anybody? Because you've got ins at the university, you've got ins at the community college. Who do you know? Lo and behold, he is a hitting coach.
Who knew?
I didn't. So he begins private lessons with my daughter, but I'm there. Okay. I'm at these private lessons. But at these lessons, he begins to build rapport with me because I'm there for an hour. Once a week, sometimes twice a week with another mom and her daughter. I didn't realize, by the way, it's against AIA for him to do that.
Really?
Yes. It is against AIA for a coach over a program to give private lessons to any athlete in the program.
On their team. Sure. And that makes sense, right? It does.
But he said, I can't do it during the season, but I can in the off season. And we're going to hide it under his program, his outside club that he has. So that's how we're going to get away with it. That's how he did. I didn't realize that that's what was happening, but that's what he said later on. So it went well that year. My daughter made, I think, JV that following year. She's a sophomore. Towards the middle of her sophomore year is when she became the manager of the boys volleyball varsity. Okay. So now she's more one-on-one with coach.
Okay.
So it starts with little strange things. I was happy that she was the manager. I was like, this is great. It also gives you access. It does give you more access to the coach. It gives you, you're showing your loyalty because I think that's important too. Right. You're showing up, you're doing practices, you're going to games, you're working hard, you're doing everything that you need to do. And I'm proud of her and I'm supporting her. So it begins with, hey, I went to Dollar General and I got coach a drink and I got him some M&Ms and he gave me $20 and told me to keep the change. And I'm like, all right, well, you're not his personal assistant, but okay, maybe that's how they do things. Now I'm not even sure because again, I have this rapport and I have this trust with him and I'm okay, everything's good.
So when did you begin to know that something was off?
That summer between her sophomore and junior year is.
And what happened?
He asked her to watch his house while he was out of town at the end of her sophomore year. And I wasn't comfortable with it, but I went over to the house and I met him and his wife. And I said, okay, like, what's the deal? Why are you asking my daughter? And he's like, oh, listen, I've had this one and this one. They've watched my house. It's not a big deal. But that is when he began texting her off of the school appointed apps because it was now personal.
Sure.
She was uncomfortable from the beginning, which I found out later, but it was, hey, how are you doing? How are the dogs? This is while he's gone. Show me a picture. That's where it started. Show me a picture. She was uncomfortable with it enough that the picture would be of the dog.
Well, I
Or
would assume he wanted a picture of the dog. What was he asking for specifically?
picture of her at the house. Oh, you're in the hot tub with your friends? I need a picture. So it escalated. It did escalate quickly once it did escalate. She point blank told him at one point in the text messages, my mom sees these, which I did not. And he said, okay, I'll stop,
Wow.
but didn't.
Okay.
It was a gradual thing with her. For me, I was shocked. But at the same time he moved to a private text with her, he did the same with me. Well, your daughter's here, so we don't have to talk about that on the group meeting. We can talk private. Okay. So I felt a little bit more comfortable with it. Hey, your daughter's doing great watching the dogs. She never once said to me, he's asking me for pictures.
Sure. So
Over
how
the
did you
summer,
find out?
how did I find out? In September of her junior year, she made varsity. She continued private lessons over that summer. I was not at those private lessons because she was driving. And she made varsity, and it was it was Labor Day weekend. And she said, Mom, I have to show you something. And I said, okay, what's going on? And she said, Joe's been grooming me. Like it was
What?
just,
She used those words?
yeah, sorry, I shouldn't have said his name, but yes,
That's
he's grooming
okay.
me.
I don't know who Joe is. Joe's been grooming me. Wow. So had you noticed any changes in her behavior?
She was awful.
Okay. But it's
And I
hard
love
to
my
know, like
daughter doing,
sometimes teenagers are awful.
right. And that's what I thought. I thought, wow, I wonder if this is how I treated my mom when I
Right.
was in high school. That's all I could think of. I was like, I know I wasn't nice to my mom. So I'm sure
Right.
this is normal. And
Right.
she would be on her phone and she'd be texting and I'd say, who are you texting? She's like, oh, it's Coach. Well, what are you talking about in the middle of July with did you see Japan and the US play? So that's
Sure.
what she kept. I never once checked her phone, and I regret that
Yeah.
completely.
Okay.
Because ultimately, in the end, it was months. It was thousands of text messages.
Mm-hmm.
It was months from May until she stopped and told me. It was 500 screenshots when it was all said and done. And how many times he asked for pictures from my daughter was almost daily.
Okay.
Send me a pic. What are you doing? Because they would go to the gym. Oh, you're going to the gym? Send me a pic. Show me this. Show me that. That one's blurry. Send me another. And it was constant.
So she knew something was wrong.
She was showing her friends and was like,
What?
is this how he texts you? Well,
She
no, that's
showed
not
her
how he
friends?
texts me. So she's trying to get validation.
Okay. And what did her friends tell her? Did they say, no, this is weird, this is
Yeah.
wrong?
And the
Okay.
boys, though, however, the boys said this is what he does.
To them?
No, to other girls. And apparently would show the boys on the boys' team. The
Okay.
boys knew that this was his MO, I guess, if that's this is what he does.
Okay, so your daughter comes to you in September. She says, I'm being groomed. You say, can I see the phone?
She sends me, I said, just send me some shots, please.
Okay, so you didn't take the phone.
I didn't.
Okay, and what did you do next?
I sent an email to the district.
Okay.
I went above and beyond the athletic director. I will tell you, in that moment when it happened, the veil was lifted. It all made sense, all of it. And I can't believe I was a fool. And I was fooled by the rapport that he and I built. I was fooled by, there were always little things said by other parents. There were things said by athletes about his inappropriate behavior. And I thought, well, maybe it's a jealousy thing. Maybe they're not getting the time they want. I trusted him completely.
Okay.
So it was that moment. And I realized the AD was his buddy and backing him. So when I went to district, I went to the superintendent, I went to a couple of the board members, and whomever, I can't remember who all I emailed. And I said, here's 6 of it. Here's 6 screenshots. This is grooming. This is not okay. This is the program he's running. He made racist comments. There was a lot. She came clean with all of it. She said, Mom, there was a point where he said to a Mexican, a Hispanic, and a Black girl, I don't know which one of you is a border jumper and which one is a porch monkey.
I don't even know
Told
what
a
that
Black girl, you should be jumping higher than that, right?
means. Okay.
Younger player with like little ringlets called her Juju. Horrifying.
Yeah. So you reported all of this up. Okay, first of all, actually, I want to know, how did your daughter know she was being groomed? Because yay you, yay mom, like right? Because it didn't
Right.
escalate beyond that, right?
No, there, nope.
So, in some ways, like, I think this is important. Okay. A lot of people, a lot of girls in this situation don't know to stop it or don't. And so you've done something right here. Like, what insights do you have for other parents so that in the event this happens, you can make sure that your children know what it is, know what to call it, and know how to stop
I think we've just been open with our kids, even from the beginning of phones and them having access to an outside world that we didn't have as kids. And we just talked about it openly. We talked about what it's they're building your trust.
it.
It's little by little. They're
Yeah.
just chipping away. It's
Mhm.
not, but I feel like he jumped right in once he had that one-on-one with her outside
Mhm.
of the school appropriate app. I think
Mhm.
he was just immediate.
Mhm.
But she was not the only one. She's the only one that spoke up.
Okay.
But I took over at that point and I took it to the police. I took it wherever I needed to go. The school didn't do anything. The district did nothing. They allowed him to resign. They didn't
Okay.
investigate it as a Title IX violation because grooming is harassment. They didn't do their job.
Okay, can we talk about that for a minute? Because I don't let's explain Title IX. Title IX is the federal law that exists to protect women and girls from harassment on campuses.
And it's high
And
school. It's not just college.
absolutely, absolutely. And it's required under federal law that any violations be reported to a Title IX officer and that those people investigate. And in this case, it didn't happen, right? It didn't get to Title IX.
Well, let me tell you who investigated.
Hmm.
It was head of HR. And
Okay.
she sat down with him and said, here is 6 screenshots. There's 528, and it's a gig and a half of data that I have. Do you want me to investigate it or do you want to resign? Should not have ever been a choice because, again, it's a Title IX violation. But guess who the Title IX coordinator is for the district? The
Athletics
head of
director
HR.
or the head of HR?
So the
Okay.
same lady who sat down with me is she didn't do her job. And I've talked to the
Mhm.
other superintendents, like assistant superintendents about it. Like, what are we doing differently? Why this needs to change?
Right. Because if you say, do you want to resign or do you want me to investigate? What you're doing is you're protecting a predator and passing them along. That is what you're doing. And
Yes,
that is that's business as usual. It happens again and again and again. But is the act of texting your daughter questions like send me a pic and being relentless, is it illegal?
it's not. It's a gray area of the law. The
Yeah.
detective did a phenomenal investigation. And she said to me in the end, work in a
There's no
gray
crime.
area of the law. There's nothing
Yeah.
protecting your daughter from this because he didn't
Right.
ask for a naked picture and your daughter
Right.
didn't send a naked picture. Pretty much he's good to go. He knows what he's doing. All of them know what they're
Absolutely.
doing. They know the law and they know how to stay within it.
Right. So that's scary, right?
It's
That's scary
gross.
because you have no legal protection from this type of behavior. And so we're really relying on institutions and protocols, right? The AIA rules and district rules. That is what we're relying on because there is no crime.
Correct. Correct. And I've asked the school too, why wasn't there a statement made?
Hmm.
My daughter was then harassed online by other players and by his wife at the time. And it was horrific. And I took it to the principal and said, can you please do something to help here? And they said,
Right.
well, we've had a conversation. They're not going to do it again. So my daughter loses everything. And it was heartbreaking to watch. It was just a tough time for us. But I will tell you, after all of it, I had my daughter back. That person that was mean and I didn't know what was going on. It was her lashing out and asking for help without asking for help. It was heartbreaking.
Wow.
It was heartbreaking. She's been in therapy since then. A lot of other things have occurred with her in her little life. Within a week of this, we had a close family member complete suicide. She was young. So it was piled on for my daughter. It was piled on. I don't know how she pulled through it. Miracle. We went the lawsuit route.
Mhm.
And I actually,
Against the district.
with the district, yeah,
Okay. How
finally,
did that go? Tell me about that.
we dropped everything because how long do I want to drag this out? To be honest with you, I'm going to be honest with you. All I wanted was a conversation with the district. Change.
Yeah.
Please change what you're doing. $100,000 or $50,000 isn't going to change anything. And it's almost like it's dirty money. You know what I mean? I felt like that it is not something my daughter went through this. This is not fixing any of it. The therapy's fixing it. The support she's getting fixes it. And immediately things were changed how they do things. They have an
Okay, so
app now.
they did change their protocols and their policies?
They did. They have an app now it's called Parent Square. Everything is done through Parent Square. I talked to assistant superintendent. He's the head AD of the district. And I talked to him about, who do I get a hold of in AIA to, if we can have a concussion class that these kids have to take annually, why can't
Yeah,
we have a grooming class?
right. It's a
What are we
great,
doing?
great question.
My son is a coach and had to go through the AIA process. And he said, they talk to us about what grooming looks like.
Mm,
Well, they need to talk to the kids about what grooming looks like. And there needs to be stricter laws
right.
because it's not okay for my husband to text a 16-year-old 500 times a day or whatever and ask for photos, but it's okay for a coach to do it to an athlete. That's what I was told by the prosecuting attorney.
So, I mean, if she had asked him to stop, then it would have been harassment, right? But
Maybe so.
if you're engaging in a conversation, and I can see how it would be very difficult to write a law because you can't prohibit communication.
Right.
We don't want a law that says, you're never allowed to text a minor. There are very good reasons why you might want to and need to text a minor for privacy. So it's just a difficult area. But you have already made so many like strong impacts by getting the school district to change their policies, by having your daughter set up, to know what was happening to her, to have the words and to know that she could come to you for help. So, but then she had this backlash from her teammates, right? And from the school, which is also like always part of the story. Every story has this where the victim is now the enemy.
Yeah.
How did she handle that? And what advice do you have for people?
That was a really hard time. It was enough to go through what we went through. The district they said they were protecting her, but they weren't. I'll just say quickly, they continued to allow him to use he wasn't allowed at the high school, but he's allowed to use any of their other schools for his volleyball club. I asked why that was the case. I said, why would you allow him? And HR told me, we don't want to hurt his business. Arizona Region Volleyball told me, be careful, we don't want to hurt his business. Okay, I guess that's normal. The only ones that took me serious was USA Volleyball, Safe Sport. They handed down for first time offense. They actually did what they needed to do and handed down a no contact order for 18 months and that he has to have a USA Volleyball rep with him at all of his practices. He no longer has a girls' side of his volleyball club. He only has a boys' side of the volleyball club, which is good. So he's kind of shut down a little bit, but I'm sorry, I forgot the question. I kind of went off on a little tangent here, but
The question was about the backlash that your daughter received for speaking out.
It was horrible, and his wife was at the helm of that. And again, I've spoken to her since. She owns it. She said, "You're right. I was backing him 100%." There were adults that backed him that wanted to start petitions against her to have her removed from the team and have him put back because he lied about the school never put out a statement. So he was allowed to spin the narrative the way he needed to and wanted to. So it was basically, here's a kid who's angry that I bumped her down to JV because she wasn't playing well. Mom was okay with everything until I bumped her down to JV. I wasn't okay with everything. I didn't know everything. And so he spun this to where then he was the victim and my daughter was the horrible person. Well, these people are backing him 100%. His daughter was on the team. Her friends were on the team. The boyfriend was the manager. The daughter's boyfriend was the manager, and they were ruthless. There was stuff online where my daughter was called a CUNT. My daughter was like, you're sitting the bench, you're doing this, you're doing that. So I have pictures of all of this and I send it to the school and they said, well, we got their computer and yes, they were looking up petitions, but I didn't see that they started one, so we can't really do anything about it.
Yeah, so the school wasn't going to do anything.
They didn't. Oh, no, they didn't. They really didn't. And it was so frustrating. And when she said, I'm being harassed, we sat down with the principal and the head coach, the new head coach, and he said, oh, I didn't know you were being harassed. And she backed away, and we just, in the background, I was working on things. I was doing things, but nothing was ever put out. I was very quiet, and I was just, like a duck, just busy underwater, making sure I'm staying afloat. Like, okay, what can we do next? What's the next step? Who do we contact?
Did you think about publishing all of the text messages, perhaps redacting your daughter's portion and putting all of his online?
I would I would love to. I would love to. Because when you break it down, I actually have a document of it, of how persistent he was. Can I have a pic? What are you doing? Are you wearing your Lululemon shorts? Are you, yeah.
Filthy, disgusting behavior.
Right. But within the law.
Right.
So, and apparently her saying my mom knows about this and okay, I'll stop.
Right.
Doesn't matter.
No, it's an admission he knows he's wrong, but it doesn't make it illegal.
He said it in the interview with the investigator, with
really?
the detective. He said,
I didn't do anything illegal.
Well, it was more, well, I wouldn't want somebody to talk to my daughter that way. Well, then is it okay for you to talk to somebody else's daughter that way? Well, no. He hum-hawed. I don't know. He didn't own any of it, which is fine. I know the truth. I would love to put it out there because I would love for people to see how persistent he was. But I didn't know if that would fall under slander. It scares me to have him come after me.
Definitely.
And he went after coaches. He went after the school district. He sent cease and desist.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
Yeah.
Ridiculous. But you can have an inappropriate relationship with a minor and not get in any trouble.
Awfully brazen. Awfully brazen. So your daughter is now out of high school?
She graduated this year.
She graduated. Okay. Did the backlash die down? Was she able to live out high school in a normal way?
I think so.
The nightmare stopped eventually.
As it can possibly be with the situation the way it was. Mm-hmm. I think things died off probably towards the end of volleyball season. Mm-hmm. And then she said starting in January, she would see the daughter at the gym and the daughter was saying, hi. Yeah. Hi, how are you? And then a friend, hi, how are you? And I thought, well, that was weird. Well, then it came about that there's a divorce going on there. So it was revealed to the soon-to-be ex-wife what was going on in its fullness.
Got it.
So the truth prevails ultimately. The wheels of justice are slow. And I want to now tell my story. I was really afraid of backlash, is why I haven't really put it out there to the public what happened. Mm-hmm. But I think it's time for people to hear this is common. This is common. This is happening all the time. And we are not protecting our kids. The schools aren't protecting our kids. I should say that.
Right.
The schools aren't owning it. You know, when you don't have a statement put out by a school to nip it and say, this is what we're doing. We're handing this information over to the police. This is the outcome of it. This person was fired. Within 2 months, we had the same situation with the football coach. There was sexual harassment going on with the trainers, and there was hazing going on. There was never a statement put out again by the district. Nothing was said. It's like they're sweeping it under the rug. We don't want to put the bad stuff out there. We have the right to know. We have the right to know.
You cannot expect that institutions are going to protect your kids. They're not.
They're protecting themselves.
They will protect themselves. They will protect, who are their people. And this is hard because we don't want to keep our kids at home all the time. Like they have to live in the world. So the best we can do is educate them. I want to go back to, I asked you if there was changes in behavior and you said she was pretty rotten and awful. And, we're talking at that point about a 14, 15,
16.
Was she 16?
She was 16.
She was 16.
At that point where she was rotten that summer of rottenness. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay, so 16. In my experience with my teens, they're mostly out of that horrible, terrible, like by 16. Moody. But anyway, like of course our kids are gonna go through times when they're experiencing lots of inner turmoil and they're jerks to us. I think it's developmentally expected. But how do you know the difference between a kid who's having a bad day and a kid who's experiencing something more significant? Do you have any insight on that?
I think it was sudden.
Okay.
It was sudden.
And out of character?
Literally overnight. All of a sudden she was withdrawn. And it was a summer where she had gone to Europe for a school trip and she had gone to New York to see my sister. So I'm looking at it like she's tired. She's busy. Is it not unusual for her to go in her room and be withdrawn a little bit? But she was looking back now, it was more like on the phone, it was private. She was not letting anything in. I noticed initially in that summer, she would go to the gym and work out with him in the mornings. And then all of a sudden I'm not. I should have asked more. I should have pushed more. I should have said, give me your phone. And I didn't. Yeah. We have the right as parents to ask our kids what's going on. If you have a gut feeling, and I did, something wasn't right. I just didn't pinpoint it to that. Again, I thought it was just her being moody. And she's still moody at 18, and I love her dearly. She's sleeping right now. But she can be moody, and there's times, but we talk. And that was something that changed too.
Mm-hmm.
We were no longer sitting at the dinner table talking.
Mm-hmm.
There wasn't that really any back and forth. Hey, how was the gym? It was good. It was just short answers. If she was out with us, she was on her phone. Mm-hmm. She wasn't engaged with the family, which was unusual.
I think one thing we should consider as parents, when we give our kids phones, I mean, obviously you should be talking to your kids about grooming and love bombing, and they should know what that is, but also maybe even previewing for them. Like, this happens to kids all the time, that adults are inappropriate. And in the event that I believe that something might be going on, I'm going to take your phone. And it's not because I don't trust you, it's because I love you, but this happens and it's my responsibility. They should know that, and we shouldn't be, because we don't want to invade our kids' privacy or imply that we don't trust them. But we do have a responsibility to look, especially if you've got the red flags. And I think that those things can be hard to make mesh.
Right.
So what kept you from saying, like, something's going on your phone, show me?
Honest, probably the fear of what her reaction would be.
Yeah.
Am I going to push her farther away?
Sure.
And that's silly as a mom, but that's probably my biggest concern was, and I didn't have to worry about this with my son.
Mm-hmm.
He would have here, Mom, look, she was just private, and I get that. I'm private about my phone.
Mm-hmm.
My husband has access to it if he needs it. We're not that kind of family. Like, there's just trust, but you can't. It's not that I didn't trust my daughter.
Right.
It's that I didn't trust the person grooming my daughter.
Right. Right. Absolutely.
And I didn't know until I knew. And it was all at once. It just rained on me. It all made sense.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing of it is the school knew he was an issue.
They did. They knew.
They did. There was a coach that came forward and said, listen, I'm going to tell you. They knew. But he had the AD in his back pocket. And the AD was more concerned about his brotherhood of whatever they have going on, the boys club. And he allowed him it was free reign for the coach.
Nikkol, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your story.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it.
I wish I would have been a little bit more organized in my thoughts, but there's so much to tell. There's so much to tell. Can you tell me how I can publish these? And I'll do it.
Thanks so much for listening to the Modern Arizona podcast. If you've enjoyed what you've heard today, make sure to download it, like it, leave a review, and share it with your friends. If you know someone who would be a good guest, or you would like to be on the Modern Arizona podcast, make sure to give us an email or reach out to us at mymodernlaw.com.